John Ochins, and welcome to Schooling Around. To be or not to be, more tests. That is one of our questions for Assistant Superintendent Ken Weaver. Oxford Virtual Academy, growing and growing, and this school year, going, going, gone. Stay tuned. Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction Ken Weaver has a big job, and that job only gets bigger when the government decides to make a change. With all the talk about tests and changes going on, I decided to stop by Ken's office to try to wrap my mind around it. When it comes to the government and testing, I asked Ken what gets him the most.
The fact that they've changed so much and they keep discussing changes, especially with the state testing. It's very hard to move a school district and to make adjustments to the different requirements of the different state testing and also the curriculum. And the legislature recently introduced a bill to change the Michigan standards again. They just changed them in, like, I think 2010, phased them in, and we're just have been teaching on them and assessing on the standards about a year, I think, year or two. And so now they're looking at possibly one of the I think it was the representatives, member in the House of Representatives, that introduced the bill to maybe throw out our current standards and change them to, I think, Massachusetts. They don't realize that we buy curriculum materials, that we've been gearing up around changing to the standards that they adopted in 2010, and that this is a big process, and to just throw them out and start all over again is in my mind is ridiculous.
What was the rationale for that?
It's more just politics. They like to blame, each side likes to blame each other and so forth, and they like the Republicans, especially local Republicans, like to blame federal government for everything, but they probably more to blame than anything else for the current state of education in the state of Michigan. But yet they like to push it off, and anything that you talk about Common Core, it gets people all upset, and they think the federal government's coming in to take over their schools. And quite honestly, the Common Core was created by states and by governors, adopted by states. It was really truly a state initiative. The federal government, the only thing they did was say, hey, we would like you to adopt those, and so they tied it to funding. That's the only thing that the federal government did. And there's a lot of countries around the world that have national or federal level standards. It's really, especially the standards in ELA and math that they adopted, they're rigorous, they make sense, but yet people are all up in arms. A lot of it's just politics, and it just depends on who's in the White House and what party they belong to, whether or not they think they're great or they think they're not so good as far as standards go. And it's really, they keep changing things, and then they expect their schools to try to adapt, and we don't have the resources to continually change things. It takes a long time to, like in elementary, I've got 90 classroom teachers, and it takes a long time to change and get them to be familiar with those standards, and to change methods and so forth, and to continuously looking at changing things, changing standards, and then possibly changing the tests that you are using. That's the other thing. With the M-STEP, they're now talking about maybe replacing replacing it with NWEA, not the current version of NWEA, but they would contract with NWEA, which is like the Northwest Education Association or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's a third-party professional organization that sells tests. They make money off of selling tests to different entities. I think it's about 60 or 70% of Michigan currently uses their NWEA MAP test, which is kind of like a progress monitoring or a screener tool. We use something similar to that called FAST. We implemented. It's about the same thing. It's a computer adaptive test for reading and math. Tells where kids are at and if they have some major issues and stuff like that. But the state's now also talking about contracting with NWEA to create and replace the M-STEP. To me, this is just another example of foolishness from the state. They've actually done a ton of work. The MDE, although it's been somewhat a huge process, the MDE should be actually commended for its efforts as far as getting the M-STEP up and going. They were given almost no time to do it by the state legislature. 9 months before we were supposed to take a state summative test, they threw out the one that they had been picked because it was associated with Smarter Balance, and they thought the federal government was forcing it on us. So they threw that out and told the MDE to develop one, and the MDE developed one in about 9 months. Which it was a bit of a mess last year, but to have developed a test 3 through 8 in 11th grade in 9 months.
We're talking about M-STEP, right?
We're talking about M-STEP. They developed that test in about 9 months.
And all that could be out the window if they...
Right, and they were thinking about maybe now changing it after they did all this work, got it up and going. They've improved a lot of things this year. The biggest thing, the issue they had last year was the results didn't get back fast enough. But there was so many things, so many variables. They're setting cut scores, and that takes a lot of time because not only do you want to research how you're setting the cut scores, but a lot of time politics get involved in the cut scores and setting the cut scores and what's proficient. And so then you got both sides kind of bickering back and forth as to what the cut scores should be. Should schools look good? Should schools not look good? Because there's really no research as to tying that test into college success or career success.
So what about next year?
I don't see it's changing next year. I would hope not. It's a little too late to change for next year. So
I think there'll be another.
There'll be M-STEP again next year, I believe, because it's just now in the House and Senate they're talking about it. So I believe M-STEP will be back. M-STEP is given in 3 through 8, ELA and math, and then in certain grade levels, science and social studies also test. I don't know right off the bat, it's like 4th and 5th grade, and then again in 7th and 8th grade, they test either science and social studies.
Yeah.
And then again, they test again in 11th grade. In 11th grade, it's a little bit of a different situation. They have the SAT, and then they have M-STEP as far as science and social studies, and then they also have the ACT work keys that they take in 11th grade. Also, they introduced this year, which has been, I think, a very good thing, they introduced the PSAT in 9th and 10th. While it doesn't count for accountability, it is a required test, and it really helps the kids prepare for the SAT. The PSAT is kind of the precursor. It is the precursor to the SAT, it helps predict what you're going to score, and then you can use those results to do better.
Let's take a look at the big picture in a moment. SAT, PSAT, M-STEP. It's hard for us regular folks to keep track. How about an overview?
It really started off looking for some accountability for schools and trying to also looking at college entrance. Colleges needed a way to, it had all these kids applying from different schools with all close to the same GPAs, same course titles or different course titles and everything else. They had to look for a way to compare students and to see whom they wanted to enroll. And so you started off with a couple of different tests. Mainly the two biggies are ACT and SAT. We were on the SAT. Michigan had given the ACT for, about 7 or 8 years as its 11th grade test. And then they switched about a year. This was the first year, about a year and a half ago, they switched over to the SAT, and so we just gave the SAT for the first time this spring. Both tests are a lot more similar now. The SAT went through a major makeover for this administration of the test, not just for us but across the country. It's the same test across the country. There's not like a Michigan version of the test. So they just they updated it, made it based off of the Common Core or the ELA math standards, which Michigan does use as well too. So it does align with what Michigan is teaching. It's a very rigorous test, but it's, like I said, it's across the nation, so you have a comparison that colleges can do. So then, as well as you had that going on, then as well you have the need for school improvement and a way to compare schools, and that's where states started to develop their own state testing. That came out of like No Child Left Behind. It was previous to that as well too. States were doing individual testing and trying to see where they're at. The MEAP had been around for 30 years or so. I mean, it had been around a long time. But then with the passing of No Child Left Behind, now you had this requirement that it had to be used for accountability and everything else, and there was rewards and punishments, more punishments if you didn't do well, and now you have the new version of that law. Every Student Succeeds Act, I believe is what it is, the ESSA, which is the latest version of it, and we're still trying to figure out what that all means. It's a huge piece of legislation, and it is just now starting to roll out, and so we're waiting to see what changes take place. But in general, it does return more control back over to the states, a lot more control back over to the states, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. We'll see what the state legislature does with it. So far, they haven't proven to be too responsible in my eyes.
Do colleges really pay attention to tests?
They do with the ACT and the SAT, but even colleges, though, are realizing that a standardized test score does not make a perfect student. There are a lot of students that scored extremely well on the ACT or the SAT that are no longer in college because they also didn't have the determination, the study skills, and a lot of those other intangibles that necessarily you can't measure with the standardized tests. And they were great at bubbling in an answer, but as far as being able to use some of that knowledge in practical situations, they may not be. And there's a lot of people that have graduated from colleges that are not really that proficient at their careers because of the same thing. There's not always a direct correlation to getting a college degree and career success. And there's a lot of people that take alternate pathways nowadays. That's probably the biggest thing that's changed, is nowadays you have many different paths to get to the same end result, which is a successful career. You have a lot of CTE opportunities, vocational opportunities. You have a lot of training opportunities that previously weren't there, online opportunities. There are just a lot of different things out there. It's not just going to a 4-year school anymore.
Things are getting a little more entrepreneurial, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are, and some of that's good, some of that's bad. K-12, I'm not a big fan of that approach, because there's a lot of kids that, not every child is exactly the same, and there's a lot of kids that are, quite honestly, easier to educate, don't cost as much to educate, and then there's other kids that are more expensive to educate and more difficult. And every child is valuable, and every child needs a chance and an opportunity to succeed and make the most out of their life. And that's where I think K-12 differs from businesses, and that approach, that business model that they're trying to force on schools. And I don't think the legislature gets it. They think everything should be, because most of them are businessmen, they think that competition and choice should drive everything. And this is children that we're dealing with. This isn't a manufactured item. There's a big difference. At the same time, I also believe wholeheartedly in having some accountability for schools. So I think you've got to have a balance. And I think there's somewhere in between there's a balance, but as long as they keep offering more opportunities and more choices and everything else, what ends up happening is what few resources they've dedicated towards education get spread out among more entities. It doesn't become more effective, it becomes less effective in my eyes, at least.
And what about International Baccalaureate and extracurriculars?
Yeah, they've really changed. I mean, they've gone back to more looking at a holistic picture of the child. Like I said, they still look at the SAT and the ACT scores. Don't get me wrong. They're still an important factor, but they're not the end all. Colleges look at many different things. They do look at a child's GPA while they were at school, what classes they took. That's a huge thing that a lot of parents don't realize. Many times they in pursuit of the higher GPA, sometimes parents and students make a not a really good choice by taking easier classes. But colleges go through, and what parents don't realize sometimes is colleges go through and they take out those grades for classes that aren't very rigorous, and then they weight other classes that are rigorous. And the same thing we do at our high school, we weight our grades so that like AP courses get more weight, so that a child is rewarded for challenging themselves. And so colleges do the same thing. They have their own system of doing that. They don't use the high school GPA. They go through and figure they take the grades and everything else, and they figure out their own. They take out certain things like band and gyms and stuff like that and get rid of those classes because they don't look at them as being academically rigorous enough. They also look at after school opportunities, what leadership opportunities they had, what volunteer organizations they participated in. Sometimes there's essays that they need to write, so they're looking at their English skills as well too, and getting a first-hand look through those essays at whether the child has enough of development in their ELA skills to succeed in college. So there's many things that go into whether or not a child gets admitted into a college or a university. One of those, like you said, is the IB. We've had several children go off and get awarded 20, 30, 35 credits through the IB program. We got our early college program as well too. Many children are successful in going off and getting accepted into colleges and bringing along those credits as well too. So there's a lot of different opportunities, and parents have to just ask the questions of their counselors, be persistent, and try to figure out what is the best opportunity and what is going to be best for their child, for what their career aspirations are, and what will best prepare them. And also be realistic. U of M only has so many spots. Not everybody's going to be there, and it's not appropriate for everybody. And just realize that, as the old expression goes, there's a lid for every pot. And the best thing is to have a plan and to try to work towards something. It's the children that don't have a plan that I worry most about, because they tend to flounder a little bit and can't find that direction.
We'll have more from Ken on a future broadcast. The Oxford Virtual Academy is in expansion mode. Executive Director Andrew Hulbert talks about their big plans and how it all began.
So we've seen the Oxford Virtual Academy expand significantly over the last 4 to 5 years, and when we moved into our new location 3 years ago at the marketplace in just south of downtown Oxford, we had really seen that we had outgrown that facility before we had ever even moved in. So this process has been in 3 years in the making as we've been developing our kindergarten through 5th grade curriculum and those students and that student base. We've really expanded and put more emphasis and resources into that area. And as we've seen that growth start, we saw the significant need to have a location where kindergarten through 5th grade students can come in, work with teachers, do project-based learning opportunities and activities. And so we've really put an emphasis on expanding that real estate so that those students have an area of need. In addition to that, our teachers that work with kids online, they need a place to have quiet isolation so that they can work with their kids online. And we have 3 rooms that'll be built into this new building that'll allow our teachers to have what we call live lessons with the students that may be an hour, 2 hours away, so that they don't ever have to come in, but they can work with the teacher as if they're sitting right next to one another.
So does this like double the square footage of your area over
Yep.
in the complex there?
So we have 3,500 square feet existing, and this would be an additional 3,500 square feet. This is going into the location where the old Genesis Bank had vacated.
The new area should be ready by August 1st. There's also been some expansion in the Ann Arbor area.
So we have a new partnership with a community, homeschool community out of the Ann Arbor location, or Ann Arbor area. So that'll give us our second homeschool partnership in the Ann Arbor area. This is based out of a church called Christ the King Church in Ann Arbor. It's right just off the grounds of the Domino's Pizza Farm. So it's exciting location. It's right next to Washtenaw Community College, which just as of last week, we signed a partnership with Washtenaw Community College to expand our dual enrollment opportunities and our Oxford Schools early college opportunities. So we're going to have students that'll be able to take a huge array of certificate programs, associate degree programs in items like digital animation, ASL, all these new and exciting opportunities that'll be strictly online for students here in Oxford, Ann Arbor, or anywhere that can take advantage of Washtenaw Community College.
I asked Andrew about this year's major accomplishments.
I mean, this year we've seen, once again, last year our top to bottom experience, or our ranking for the state was preliminary. It was never published, but we were at the top with a successful completion rate for students in virtual schools, well over 84%. The state average for a seat time waiver student or student in a virtual class was on average 53%. And so for us to have that kind of growth and that opportunity, and this year we're seeing that number even go above the 84%.
Next year, OVA expects to have 180 students. Moving up, moving out, and just plain moving. More after this.
Today, a new creature walks among us, terrorizing innocent citizens. Until this threat can be contained, we must all be on the lookout for the dreaded digital deadwalkers.
Dude,
They're not looking out for you.
engage.
A public service safety message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, who want to keep everyone well connected
Sorry.
with strong, healthy bones.
Canine Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Each year they take in hundreds of dogs and bring them into suitable homes. A certified nonprofit organization, Canine Dog Rescue strives to give pound dogs a new leash on life. To donate, adopt, or even volunteer, call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website, dogsaver.org, and click on the Canine Stray Rescue League link.
There's a whole lot of fifth graders getting ready to move into middle school this fall. To help them prepare, Oxford Middle School has a program called Moving Up. They bring our fifth graders over, a few at a time, to take a look at what's up at OMS. We caught up with Assistant Principal Marianne Morricone for a quick description.
Today here at Oxford Middle School, we are welcoming our fifth graders from Lakeville and OES, I believe. Yesterday we had welcomed all the other students from the other elementaries. So we are doing a presentation on welcoming our fifth graders, our policies here at the middle school, and what it means to be a Wildcat.
Meanwhile, over at Oxford Elementary School, some stuff to do over the summer in Discover Your Hobby Day. There were examples of everything from sewing and model airplanes to sports and Indian dancing. Teacher Peggy Mueller was in charge.
Is where we spend one day a year. We call it the building-wide event, and every single year we have a different theme. The theme this year was Discover Your Hobby, where we had presenters, volunteer presenters mainly, come from all different areas around here. We've got parents coming, we've got some groups coming from some schools in Oakland County. We've also had some people from Oakland University coming here and just presenting their hobbies and sharing their talents with our students throughout the day, so our students get exposure to things they might normally not get exposure to.
And for our seniors, an ending before a new beginning. Chaz Millard's media production class covers everything from carnival to clap out.
PAC, this is my last day, senior year, and we're going to the senior slideshow.
The spring carnival was not the only thing the seniors got to witness on the last day of school. They also got to sit down and watch the senior slideshow, which was full of high school memories. The senior clap out was after the slideshow, where they got to walk through the halls of Oxford High School one last time while everyone clapped them out and gave them their respect.
The clap out started in 2012 when we were trying to do something different and something that some of the other schools haven't done around here. So we decided to have all of our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors come in to help celebrate the seniors' accomplishments. So we had them line the hallways and we walked a path through the school, so they were walking the school hallways one last time before they headed out, on their next journey of life.
From all of us here at Oxford High School, have a great future, seniors.
Thanks to Chaz Millard's media production class at Oxford High. Our senior men's choral group had a way of saying goodbye too. They visited several teachers their last week of school and did a little serenade.
3 o'clock in the morning, and baby, I just can't treat you right. Well, I hate to leave you, baby. I don't mean maybe, because I love you so. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must say, good night, sweetheart, good night. Good night, sweetheart, good night. Good night, sweetheart, good night. Good night.
Thanks to our man at the controls, Kyle Snage, Dan Zweiss at the editing desk, and you for watching. This is Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.